Welcome back to the Snowpointcast. So we're going to be looking at a deck from 2008 called GG, Plox, or Gardevoir. Deck of many names, but also a deck of a lot of strength. Got first at the World Championships in 2008. Jason Klaczynski was his very first or second Worlds win. First was in 2006. And the deck is just a force in any format that it's in that has energies that count for more than one. So in this format, it uses Scramble Energy and Double Rainbow. In 2010, it uses Double Colors Energy. Just an absolute powerhouse of a deck. So let's get right into it. So starting off with 4 Ralts. You're playing 4 Ralts. And Ralts got 60 HP, Psychic type. Smack for 1 colorless does 10, and then Confuse Ray for 1 Psychic. Flip a coin if heads the defending Pokemon is now confused. So having a Confuse attack on a basic, not as good as Paralyzed, but in some situations it could actually be better, because having that damage on your opponent can be a big deal. Already doesn't do a ton of damage. So you're also playing 2 Kirlia. Kirlia's got 80 HP, Psychic type, single retreat still. Psychic Research for 1 Psychic. Search your discard pile for a supporter card and use the effects of that card as the effect of this attack. So actually a pretty good attack. Being able to use the supporter that you used on your turn 1 or turn 2, depending on if you went first or second. If you have nothing else in your hand, I mean, it at least keeps you alive. If you have an energy, which is really nice, you have a Roseanne, then all of a sudden you're still living. And then Telekinesis is also not bad. So for Psychic Double Colorless, choose one of your opponent's Pokemon. This tech does 40 damage to that Pokemon. You'll mostly only be using this if you have a Scramble Energy and a Kirlia out, but it is really good at sniping down a bench Pokemon that your opponent has retreated. Okay, so we're also playing 3 Gardevoir, because Gardevoir is the main attacker in the deck. 110 HP. It's 2 retreat, so you get 1 more retreat. The plus 30 weakness to Psychic. Telepass is the Poke Power. Broken Power, arguably the best that Pokemon's ever printed. So once during your turn before you attack, you can search your opponent's discard pile, choose a supporter card you find there, and use that supporter as the effect of this ability. So this power. So like being able to telepass for Roseanne's keeps you consistent on energy if your opponent drops Roseanne's, which is like a staple card that everyone plays. Or Celio's Network just keeps you alive as well. Celio's Network. Celio's Network, yeah. Just keeps you alive and like keeps your Pokemon draw good, keeps your energy consistent. It's just such a good ability. And speaking of good things on this card, Psychic Lock is also very strong. So for Psychic 2 colors, it does 60, and then your opponent's Pokemon can't use any powers during their next turn. So power locking is great because of Claydol. Claydol is a really good draw support Pokemon in this format. Very, very strong. Arguably one of the other best Pokemon abilities ever printed. And you just shut that down, and you shut down a bunch of other stuff as well. So being able to shut down everything that your opponent's doing just hurts their consistency while you're absolutely breezing by with Telepass consistency. So amazing card, very, very powerful. Another really powerful part of this deck is your ability to play Gallade without playing separate basics. So Ralts evolves into Gardevoir and Gallade. Being able to just play the 2 Gallade as well. Gallade is an amazing attacker as well. So it's got 130 HP, a little bit beefier than the Gardevoir. Keeps out 2 retreat and same Psychic weakness. Not going to be using Sonic Blade, although you can, because you play Double Rainbow, and there is some situations, I guess, where it's good. So Fighting Colors, put damage counters on the defending Pokemon until it has 50 HP away from being knocked out, and then your opponent switches the defending Pokemon with one of his or her bench Pokemon. So not a crazy good attack, to be honest. There's a lot of ways around this, although there is some situations where if you have nothing else to do, it is a pretty decent attack. And then Psychic Cut, that's the main reason to play this card, so really good attack. Psychic 2 colors, it does 60. You may choose up to as many of your face down prize cards as you like and put them face up. If you do this deck to 60 plus 20 for each prize card you chose. So base 60 is good. Base 60 with a Scramble Energy after you die is amazing, especially because you can go invest all my energy on a Gardevoir, you know, Double Rainbow and a basic energy or whatever, be attacking with Psychic Lock, and then you die. If you don't have another option, they have something really beefy that you can't take out, like an Empoleon or something. You can't just let them attack for like 3 turns with Empoleon while you Psychic Lock them. That's just like really bad for you. So what you can do is you put the Gallade up, search for a Scramble Energy, put a Scramble on, and then all of a sudden you can Psychic Cut with a single attach, which is crazy. You can't search for the Scramble Energy, you have to draw it. But with Telepass and Claydol, it's like super easy to do. Psychic Cut, really, really solid one-shot attack in the deck. You're also playing a Gardevoir Lv.X. So Gardevoir Lv.X, 130 HP, 2 retreat, times 2 weakness instead. Teleportation is the Poke Power. Once during your turn before you attack, choose one of your active Pokemon or one of your bench Pokemon and switch Gardevoir with that Pokemon. So just keeping your mobility is really nice with teleportation, keeping your Gardevoirs alive as long as you can. And then Bring Down actually has some use as well. If you're Psychic Locking your opponent and they're kind of just retreating to the bench and you need to take one last prize for the game, you can go 2 Psychic and then choose one of your choose one Pokemon, yours or your opponent's, with the fewest remaining HP, and that Pokemon is now knocked out. So Bring Down does have some really solid use. well. So you're also playing a Dustnoir line. So Dustnoir, or the Duskull rather, 50 HP, Psychic type, single retreat, resistance to colorless, and a weakness to darkness. Disable is really good. So for 1 colorless, flip a coin. If heads, choose one of the defending Pokemon's attacks that a Pokemon can't use that attack during your opponent's next turn. Again, not as good as Paralyzed, but a really good option if you're in a pinch, being able to lock. If you're up against an opposing Gardevoir and you go disable heads, you can potentially buy yourself a turn of powers, which is actually really big. And then you also have a move called Nightshade. So Psychic Colorless does 20 and then does 10 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Really, really niche. You're going to be using that, but I guess there are some situations. Okay, but you're playing that to play the Dustnoir. So Dustnoir's got 120 HP, Psychic type, 3 retreat, colorless resistance, and a dark plus 30 weakness. Dark Palm is the reason you play this guy. So Dark Palm, once during your turn before you attack, if your opponent has 4 or more benched Pokemon, choose one of them and all cards attached and shuffle it back into your opponent's deck. So great for clearing your opponent's board of energy or stage 2 line that they've wanted to set up. This is kind of a cuttable card in my opinion. I think that Dustnoir is... It's interesting because it's so good. Usually what you do with Dustnoir is you hold it in your hand, you don't play it until you can go Duskull, Rare Candy, Dustnoir, and then you Dark Palm. If you leave the Duskull out, it's good. It restricts your opponent's bench. However, the issue with that is it's not punishing them for overbenching. You would much rather kill the attach and get the attach shuffled back or Pokemon shuffled back than have them just not play cards in their hand. Both are good, but I think taking away energy attachments is obviously better. But the real problem is the meta is a lot of really good players know about Dark Palm, and they know that good players also won't be benching Dustnoir until the turn where it's useful. So sometimes they'll just keep their bench at 3, which is good that they do that without you even thinking about it. And it's kind of an interesting meta where Dustnoir is involved. People are restricting their bench for no reason a lot of the time. But I think one of the things that Jay said in one of his videos, I think it was his Garchomp video, the Sammy Seikoom played a Dustnoir line in his Garchomp list, and he recommended take it out for Muck, which I think is actually a really good replacement in this meta. Being able to punish Scramble Energy and double Rainbow Energy is like really, really powerful, as well as being able to shut off powers, and the fact that it's a stage 1, not a stage 2. So it's a little bit easier to get out as well. However, I think neither of them are wrong. They're both just kind of personal preference, or depending on what kind of meta you're playing in. I think Dustnoir is better in a field of like newer players, but Muck might be better in a field of more experienced players. Anyway, moving on. We're actually going to talk about hard feelings first. So Psychic Colorless, because you can do this with double Rainbow Energy or Scramble Energy in a single attach, put 5 damage counters on the defending Pokemon, then count the number of prize cards your opponent has taken, put that many damage counters on the defending Pokemon. So you can hit them for 10 damage counters and no resistance because you're just dropping counters. So that's actually a really decent attack if you're in a situation where your opponent has taken a solid lead on prizes. You can hit them for some damage at least and then not fall so far behind. Okay, so also playing a Claydol line. So 2 Baltoy, 50 HP, single retreat, weakness to grass, psychic balance, the reason you play this guy. So for 1 colorless, if you have less cards in your hand than your opponent, draw cards until you have the same number of cards as your opponent. So great draw. If you have nothing except for an energy and maybe a bench Pokemon, at least you're drawing like 3 or 4 cards, depending on what else is in your hand. And then we don't play fighting, so we're not going to touch spin turn. We do play those to play Claydol. So Claydol's the broken ability I was talking about earlier. 80 HP, fighting type, 2 retreat, and then a weakness to grass still. So cosmic power, once during your turn before you attack, you may choose up to 2 cards in your hand and put them on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you do, draw cards till you have 6 in your hand. So you can potentially just draw 6 cards if you only have 2 cards in your hand and you want them both to the bottom, which is really, really good for a Pokemon power. Honestly, broken. And one of the reasons Gardevoir is so good is because so many decks rely on this and you can just shut them off with Gardevoir. So really, really solid power, but also another reason why Gardevoir is good. And then you can also spinning attack if you're in a situation where you want to hit for fighting weakness. Not usually good ever because you always want to be psychic locking, but good to know that you can attack for a double Rainbow or a Scramble if it clutches out a situation somehow. It's very, very niche, but it is a Pokemon that you can attack with. Okay, so you also play 1 Jirachi EX. So Jirachi EX, 90 HP, Psychic type, single retreat, no weakness, no resistance. The no weakness is actually really nice. I didn't even know that about this card until right now. So Starlight is the Pokebody. As long as your opponent has any Pokemon EX or stage 2 evolved Pokemon in play, Jirachi EX pays 1 colorless less to use either Shield Beam or Super Cybolt. So Shield Beam is a great attack, and it's the main reason that you play this card because it fits in really well with the deck. So Shield Beam, during your opponent's next turn, your opponent can't use any Poke Powers on his or her Pokemon. So it has the same as Psychic Lock. It's the same, but it's for 1 if they have a stage 2 or Pokemon EX in play, which is really, really good because it's easy to get out. All you need is a Roseanne's Research and a Warp Point or a way to switch, and then all of a sudden you're swinging with a Psychic Lock, which is really, really solid. And then Super Cybolt is also pretty good. So for Psychic Colorless, or Psychic Colorless, if your opponent has an EX or stage 2, you just swing for 50, which is decent, but you would much rather be locking. So I honestly, I would shield beam like 4 times for not the KO before I super Psybolted, because you don't really want to open that up to your opponent. The whole point of this deck is just to lock him down. This will play 1 Jolteon. This is kind of an interesting tech card, Jolteon Star. I really like it though. There's a lot of situations where it's really good. So 70 HP, lightning type, single retreat, resistance, minus 30 resistance to metal, and then a ×2 weakness to fighting. So yellow ray is the reason you play it. Once on your turn, when you put Jolteon Star from your hand onto your bench, you may put 1 damage counter on each active Pokemon. So the math here is really important with a bunch of stage 2 Pokemon in the format. 130 is a number that's pretty important to hit. Empoleon, Garchomp, there's just a bunch of stage 2 Pokemon that really important to be able to hit 130 with. And Gardevoir almost gets there because Psychic Lock is 60, so you go 60, 60, 120. You really don't want to do that 3-shot if you can prevent it. You would much rather be 2-shotting because that keeps your aggression very, very consistent. So what you can do is you can go Psychic Lock 60, they hit you back. You go Jolteon Star, Yellow Ray, hit them for a 10, and then hit for 70 with the Ray. And then you 1-shot stuff that has 130 HP, which is actually really, really clutch. So that's the main reason you play that. It's just so you can 2-shot Pokemon with 130 HP, especially when it's searchable with Celios and Roseannes. It's just a great inclusion in the deck, I think. Then you also play 1 Chatot. So Chatot's got 60 HP, colorless type, free retreat, resistance to fighting, and a weakness to lightning. Mimic for free, shuffle your hand to your deck, then draw a number of cards equal number of cards in your opponent's hand. So this is great against other Gardevoir decks, especially because Telepass usually leads to a relatively big hand. Not always, but it can for sure. And if you're getting locked down, you don't really have access to your Claydol to brick or to get off of a brick because they're psychic locking you with either a Jirachi or a Gardevoir. You can just put a Chatot up, Mimic, hope to draw a fresh 6 or 7 or 5 or something, and at least you're still potentially in the game. And then Chatter for 2 does 20. Defending Pokemon can't retreat during your opponent's next turn. There are some situations where Chatter is really good for a deck out potentially as well. You also play 4 Rare Candy, staple in stage 2 decks. You gotta skip the stage 1, so you can just go Ralts, Rare Candy, Gardevoir. You can do this on turn 1, so if your opponent goes first and they play a supporter card, you could hit a turn 1 Telepass, which is actually really, really good. Getting to play 2 supporters in a turn, especially if that Telepass for a supporter finds you a supporter, then that's really, really solid. So Rare Candy, great in every stage 2 deck, and very, very good in this deck, no exception. You're also playing 2 Warp Point, so being able to get your opponent's Pokemon out of the active and or out of the bench and into the active is actually really good, because like I was saying before, there is some situations where you can just be hitting them with Psychic Lock, you miss a knockout and then they retreat, and eventually sometimes you can get to a point in the board where they just have retreated all their damaged attackers and they've, you know, forced you to hit into their fresh attackers, which sucks, but you can manage it, right? Because you're just locking and you're drawing and you're setting up a lot better than them usually. So once you get to that point later in the game where you lose a Gardevoir or something and they have a bunch of damaged Pokemon on their bench, you can just go Warp Point, bring one of those up, Psychic Lock, kill it, and then you're just killing most stuff when it's all damaged. So being able to Warp Point and have that option, also having the switch option. Gallade has, I think it's 2 retreat, 3 retreat, 2 retreat. So being able to switch that guy out after you use him, he's really useful for 1 turn, but also can't switch out unless you already have a teleportation Gardevoir on the bench. So being able to switch that is actually really well. I'm playing 2 Windstorm. So Windstorm, choose up to 2 in any combination of Pokemon tool cards and stadium cards, both yours and your opponents, and then discard them. So this is really important for a couple cards in this matchup, or in any matchup rather. Cessation Crystal is one of them. Is a really, really big lock card that shuts you down a lot. Shuts down Telepass, shuts down Teleportation, Dark Bomb, Yellow Ray, Cosmic Power. Like so many abilities that you have, it just shuts them all down. And your bodies as well. So the Starlight you don't get on the Jirachi either, and that just is a big bummer. So being able to get your powers back is a really big deal. And then also another really important card that Windstorm counters is Crystal Beach. So Crystal Beach is a stadium card. If your opponent, anyone rather, has a special energy card that provides 2 or more energy and instead just provides 1 colorless energy. So that really sucks because you play a lot of really good special energy, which we're going to get to in just a moment. But being able to get that Crystal Beach out of there so you're not locked out of being able to attack is very important in some matchups. And a lot of decks do play Crystal Beach. Speaking of Crystal Beach, you play 2 Lake Boundary, which also can counter Crystal Beach. So Lake Boundary, apply a weakness for each Pokemon, both yours and your opponents, as ×2 instead. So this is mainly, in my opinion, for Empozong, because being able to hit Bronzong for a 1-shot is really important, but it also has some use in the mirror. Being able to go, and you have control over when you drop it, obviously, so you want to go Lake Boundary, 1-shot on a Gardevoir. When you can clear their energy off the board, then it means that you just hit them for 120, which is a KO, and if you clear their energy, then they're pretty much like done. They pretty much lose the game because you're going to be 1-shotting almost everything on their board. Even a Gallade, you can just hit it for 120 and then Yellow Ray for 1 and then it dies. Not guaranteed because they do have that option to, you know, go Scramble Gallade, but it can be a really big lead depending on what the board looks like. So Lake Boundary, great card. Also really good against Bronzong, because letting Bronzong attack more than once is also very deadly. Okay, so getting the supporter cards, playing 4 Roseanne's Research, staple card, really solid card. Search your deck for 2 in any combination of basic Pokemon and basic energy cards. Show them to your opponent and put them into your hand. So it's great for finding Ralts pieces. Also gets your Duskull, Baltoy, any of these guys, and your basic energy as well, which you play a few of. So being able to keep your attaches and basic Pokemon consistent is really nice. Then you also play 4 Celio's Network. So Celio's Network, search your deck for a basic Pokemon or evolution card, excluding Pokemon EX, show it to your opponent, put it in your hand. So it searches for everything but the Jirachi EX, which Roseanne's grabs anyway. And just great for fighting your evolutions mainly. So it gets Gardevoir, gets Dustnoir, gets Claydol. Usually if you can find a Baltoy with either a Roseanne's or a Call Energy turn 1, then you can find a Celio's, get a Claydol, and then all of a sudden you're rolling, you're drawing lots of cards. And you're also playing 2 Bebe Search. So speaking of Pokemon Search, this is mostly just so you can keep your Pokemon search consistent. You want to be able to find lots of evolution cards, and this also can search out Jirachi. So Bebe Search, choose a card from your hand, put it on the top of your deck, search your deck for a Pokemon, show it to your opponent, put it in your hand. Another thing with Bebe Search that actually has a lot of synergy with any Claydol deck is it just takes cards out of your hand, right? So you can go Bebe Search and then you're at -2 if you're going to play the evolution card that you get anyway. So let's say you have a hand of 4, you Bebe Search, put 1 back, get 1, evolve it, put 2 to the bottom, and all of a sudden you're drawing 6 instead of 4. So really solid card with Claydol as well. And then you're also playing 2 Steven's Advice. So just a great supporter card. Draw a number of cards up to the number of your opponent's Pokemon in play. And if you have 7 or more cards, including this one, you cannot play this card. So, but regardless, really strong draw. If you can get draw 6 off of the Steven's Advice, that is amazing. And drawing 6 raw off of a supporter is very good. Speaking of drawing 6 off of a supporter, each Team Galactic Wager, really solid card, really important card. Because it's one of the only hand disruption cards in the format, and especially with Gardevoir, if you're just letting your opponent telepass, or if they have a bunch of turns where they can telepass because you missed lock or whatever, then being able to wager them out of that really solid hand is really good. So each player shuffles his or her hand to his or her deck. You play rock, paper, scissors with your opponent. The winner draws 6 cards and the loser draws 3. So this is actually crazy meta card. I think Jason Klaczynski had a ridiculous win rate in RPS. He did a lot of studying on it. It's actually absolutely fascinating, the RPS meta, but we're not going to get into this video. That's an entirely other video within itself. We are, however, going to get into the energy line. So starting off with 4 Call Energy. Call is a great special energy card, so it's 1 colorless. If it's on your active Pokemon, you can activate Call. It ends your turn, and then you can search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon and put them on your bench. So being able to set up with a Baltoy and a Ralts is great, especially when it ends your turn. So you go Ralts benched on my turn into your turn. Next turn it can evolve, which is really nice if you have a Kirlia there or something. And then you also are playing 4 Double Rainbow Energy. So Double Rainbow, really busted card. It's worth 2 energy of any color. But the drawbacks, there's 2 drawbacks. The first drawback is it can only be attached to evolution Pokemon, and the second drawback is the evolution Pokemon that this card is attached to does -10 damage. So kind of a bummer being able to do less damage, but really good because it lets you attack on turn 2 with Psychic Lock and get that really early lock. So really powerful card there for sure. And kind of nice that these 2 have synergy because this fulfills your Psychic and 1 more. So if you have a Call Energy turn 1, you can just go Call turn 1, use Call. Turn 2, if I draw into Candy Gallade and a Double Rainbow, or Candy Gardevoir and a Double Rainbow, I can just start swinging. I'm also playing 3 Scramble Energy, so super important for coming back if your opponent takes an early lead on you. Scramble Energy is worth 1 colorless energy, can only be attached to evolution Pokemon, but if you're down on prizes, if your opponent has taken a prize before you or has taken more prizes than you, then it's worth 3 of any color. So like I was saying before, Psychic Cut on Gallade, or being able to use Hard Feelings with Dustnoir out of nowhere can lead to a really strong surprise attack that could catch your opponent off guard, especially if they don't see the Scramble coming. Very deadly to whip out a Gallade out of nowhere. So you're still playing 3 Psychics, mostly for the Roseannes to have the Roseanne search, but also just want those turn 1 attaches. If your opponent plays a Roseanne's and you have a Telepass, it just lets you get a free attachment off, so it doesn't make sense to not play at least 3 basic energy in this deck because it just keeps you consistent. And they're also playing 1 Cyclone Energy. So Cyclone Energy kind of fits in with Warp Point. So it provides 1 colorless energy, but when you attach it to your active Pokemon, or your opponent switches one of the defending Pokemon. Wait, let me just read this, because I'm pretty sure it's your opponent switches. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. The wording here is just awful because it's old school card. So it says, Cyclone Energy provides 1 colorless energy when you attach this card to your hand, from your hand to evolve let me restart. Cyclone Energy provides 1 colorless energy. When you attach this card from your hand to your active Pokemon, switch one of the defending Pokemon with one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Okay, if it ended there, that would be broken because you just get a Lysander effect or a Catcher effect out of a Cyclone. It doesn't though. And why I was confused. I was like, it shouldn't work like that. And the last sentence is your opponent chooses the bench Pokemon to switch. So kind of crappy wording there. But essentially what it means is when you attach to your active, it forces your opponent to switch, which is really, really good when you're in that situation like I was talking about earlier, when you've just psychic locked them a bunch and there's a ton of damage on their board, but they put something active that they want you to hit that has a lot of HP. You can just say, I don't know, I'm not going to hit that. I'm going to hit something on the bench for a prize instead. Yeah. This has been GG Plox or Gardevoir from 2008. This is Jason Klaczynski's first place Worlds list from 2008. If you have any questions about the deck, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get to them. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.